Welcome to Ed Chat. As always, I'm your host, Corbin Russell. Thank you for tuning in again. We are on part two of our mini series on curriculum issues in technology education. And our curriculum issue, if you forgot from part one, is how to use virtual reality in the classroom, and more specifically, virtual reality in the math classroom. As you found out in the first part of our mini series, we talked about what is virtual reality. We talked about, is it possible to use virtual reality in the classroom? What are the benefits of that? And we looked at some educational research on that. There's a lot of benefits to using virtual reality in the classroom. And now we're going to focus in on the math classroom. And some of you are probably wondering, why the math classroom? Well, first off, I am a math teacher, and also I wanted to explore virtual reality in the math classroom because math has been taught the exact same way for a lot of years now. And that way is the teacher gets up to the board, teaches the lesson, the students go back and do their work through pencil paper methods. Us in the profession, we call it the drill and kill method. So a lot of times math is taught through this drill and kill method. And even through a bunch of new technologies being introduced over the years, a lot of other classrooms have changed and have evolved, but the math classroom still has seemed to show no evolution and still goes through the drill and kill method of math. So I was very interested in trying to find a new and exciting way to try to engage students in math, since a lot of people, that's a very boring subject to a lot of people that come in through the doors. They're like, oh, geez, I got math today. I don't really want to do math. It's such a boring subject. So I wanted to find a way to make it exciting and fun and be like, and people, when they come through the doors, oh man, I got math today, and be super excited that they have math. So that's why I decided to look into virtual reality. And as I talked about before, in part one, the reasons for looking into virtual reality. So one of the first things that I wanted to do was to look at, how can virtual reality even be used in the math classroom? Or is it even possible for virtual reality to be used in the math classroom? The first way that I saw that virtual reality could be used in the math classroom is I stumbled across an article, and as I said in part one, all articles will be listed with their links in the description. So the first article I came across was 3 ways to use virtual reality in the math classroom, and it was written by a lady named Kaylee Copa. And the 3 ways that she outlined in her article were, first, previewing new content. As we know, in teaching, a lot of times when you teach new content, you want to make the first lesson very exciting to kind of hook the students in. Now, in math, like I said before, it's a lot of drill and kill. So you're up at the board and you're talking about, so today we're going to look at fractions. And, we use fractions every day. Anybody that cooks in here, that's how we use fractions, and you relate it to cooking, and you try to hook the kids in that way. But what a great way, instead of having something to talk about, if you have a new game for virtual reality and the kids come in and play that game, and you kind of front load them with information so they can be successful, and then they'll want to actually learn more about the content that you're doing. The next way that she outlines is practicing new skills. And I can see this in 2 ways. First being that you personally create a game, or you find a game that suits your needs, and the kids come in and they play it for the period or for half the period or whatever, to practice those new skills. And that's a very exciting and engaging way for students to practice their new skills. Another way that it could potentially be used to practice new skills is you get students to make their own games. And of course, when they're coming up with the questions, they then have to come up with the answers. So they're practicing those new skills, and then they can trade off with different people in the classroom and play their games. And that would also be a great way to review for a test. Now, the third way that she outlines is real world connections. Now, a lot of math teachers talk about real world connections, but wouldn't it be great if you could actually show students real world connections? So here you can actually, the kids can put it on and they can actually feel, touch, and manipulate the different math and the different objects that you're talking about. When I read that last part on real world connections, I got pretty excited because what is the one question most hated by teachers? You're in the middle of a lesson, you're all excited about what you're doing, you're up at the board, and you think you got all the kids engaged, and little Johnny puts up his hand in the back, and no, it's not that question, can I go to the bathroom? It's that other question we all hate. So you're up there, you're all excited, you think you got the kids all engaged, and finally little Johnny puts up your hand, and you're like, yes, I got Johnny this time. Johnny, what's your question? Uh, excuse me, sir, but when am I ever going to use this in real life? And, the cop-out answer that we all go to is, I'm not teaching you just the math, I'm teaching you problem-solving skills that you'll need for life. Now, fast forward to being able to use virtual reality. Now, if little Johnny puts up his hand and says, sir, when am I ever going to use this in real life? And all the kids gang up on you, like, yeah, when are we going to ever use this in real life? We can now be like, well, wait till tomorrow, and we're going to get the virtual reality headsets out, and we're actually going to take a look at how this math directly applies to things that you do in your everyday life. So that was a great relief when I saw that, and I thought, that's great. And then I dove into looking at apps, and later on in this podcast, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about apps. So the next thing I wanted to look at is it even an advantage to use virtual reality in the classroom, in the math classroom? Well, I stumbled across an article from Margot Ferganando, and their article was on teaching math in virtual reality and what were the advantages of that. So this article was out of Portugal, and in Portugal they have a national exam, a national grade 12 exam in math, and the score was 7.8 out of 20 on average. So most students weren't doing very well. So what they did was they thought along the same lines that I thought, why not use virtual reality to engage these students? I did the research. I saw that virtual reality can and will engage students. So will this be possible for math as well? So what they did was they took their students in their classes and they taught the concepts, and then they let them go through and play some virtual reality games. What they found was the grades on the national exam went up quite a ways. It went up to around 13 was the new average. So now you went from a failing average to a passing average. And what the teachers found were they were very much struggling on ways to engage their students in the content. But after using the virtual reality, what they found were students were very excited and very engaged on using virtual reality in the classroom or in math. And so now they're finding that their students are excited to come to math, they're excited to do the math, and that directly corresponds and relates to achievement. So they found the engagement went up, so their achievement went up. What a great thing. Then I looked at an article written by Sam McNeil, and Sam McNeil used virtual reality in his math classroom and found out, and he states that the results were mind-blowing. And a direct quote from one of his students were that now we are a technological generation, and this is a new and exciting way to learn math. And it's not like the boring old methods that used to bore us and us not pay attention. Now it's an exciting new method that we're being used for us to be able to use math. Now, in that discussion group that I had about a week ago or so ago, we talked about whether or not it was possible for you to use it in their own classrooms. And a lot of the teachers came back with, yes, they felt that they did. And we had a discussion around professional development. And what we found was that for us personally to use it in our own classrooms, it's great to find the research, and it's great to see that a lot of teachers are having good success using virtual reality in their math classrooms and so on and so forth. But what we found was there's no professional development offered for virtual reality. And we'd like to see that professional development offered for us for virtual reality. We'd like to see how can we implement it in our classrooms, how can we best teach the lessons so that we're not just getting the kids caught up in the excitement of the virtual reality and they missing the learning altogether. So that is a very important thing. So I read some articles on that as well and tried to explain the best way I could in that discussion group about how you can make sure you monitor the students and make sure that you front load them with all the information that they needed. And also, it's very crucial to limit the time spent on playing the game. The article actually suggested about 20 minutes per person to play the virtual reality game so that they're not just getting lost into the game and missing out on what you wanted them to learn. So we talked about that, and then we had a nice discussion around apps. And a lot of the teachers didn't know that there were a lot of apps out there for virtual reality already. And so I researched a bunch for the math classroom, and I'll link the apps in the description. But there's a few that I was really excited about that I'd like to talk about. So the first one that I got really excited about was called Calculus in the Real World. The reason I got really excited about that, remember little Johnny's question? Well, that is a direct question that comes a lot of times in the calculus classroom. When am I ever going to see this, or when am I ever going to use this in the real world? So with the virtual reality app Calculus in the Real World, what it does is it takes you through a real life walk that you'd normally go on. So say you're just going for a walk in the park, and it's directly showing you where calculus is in the world at that time. Now, I find that very exciting because now the students can go on their walks in this virtual reality world and find out where calculus is actually used in the real world. The next one was virtual reality math. And what that one does is it was a great virtual reality game for geometry. Now, a lot of times in geometry, you can talk about the different shapes and you can look at the three-dimensional drawings, but in this game, you can actually touch, manipulate, spin, and fill up the different objects to calculate the volumes, see the surface area. You can wrap them in different things, and you can spin around the different geometric shapes. For lower levels, you can calculate how many faces there are on each different one of the geometrical shapes. So there's a lot of great applications there. Then the last the last application that I found that was pretty cool was called CalcFlow. And in CalcFlow, it's a virtual reality app that enables you to produce 3D graphs. So here, when you're talking about and then graphing the concepts, you can now graph the concepts in 3D, and the students again can touch, manipulate, and change them around. That component of hands-on learning that has been missed a lot in the math classroom is now very, very possible, which is great. So what I found when I was doing my research was there's a lot of great ways to use virtual reality in the math classroom, and they come with a lot of great benefits. There's a lot of great apps out there that you can use that are already made. Then I looked into different tutorials, and I found a lot of tutorials on how to make your own apps for math. Now, I thought this was even better because yeah, there's apps out there, but sometimes it's like you want to find a quick worksheet on the internet to review a concept in the classroom that you taught the day before, and you find a lot of worksheets out there, but you can't find exactly the worksheet that you wanted. And this could potentially be the same way for the apps. A lot of apps have a lot of great stuff, but you can't find that exact one that you like. Now, you can produce your own application and then give it to the students to use, and you know exactly that in there is everything you want. On the flip side of that, like I said before, you can get students to create their own applications. And I find this would be a great way to review for tests and exams. Just get students as a project to create their own app and then get other students to play it. And that way you have a more fun and engaging way of reviewing for a test instead of giving them just review worksheets or a practice test or however you do reviews in your classroom. So there's another great way that virtual reality can help engage students in their classrooms. The last thing that I want to talk about here today is a video that I saw out of Toronto. The video was entitled Virtual Reality in the Classroom. And what this was there was a company coming around and showing off their virtual reality gear and the different applications that they had. And one of the specific classrooms that they went into in Toronto, in this Toronto school, was one of the grade 9 math classrooms. Now, I don't know if you've ever been in a grade 9 classroom. I personally taught grade 9 math. And what I found when I taught grade 9 math was it was very hard to engage all the students in that classroom because you have a wide and ranging group of abilities and interests. Now, in the video, what you see when they're showing off the software is that all the students in that grade 9 math classroom are super into what the application is doing. Not only are they into it when they're playing the game, they're also all very engaged on what the other student is doing, and they're watching on the screen and kind of seeing what the student is getting right, what the student is getting wrong. So that's what I thought about there was if you're projecting it up on the screen and what the student's getting right, what the student's getting wrong, first off, you can see where the gaps are in that student's learning. And second off, it's a great learning opportunity for the other students where you can talk about, okay, what mistakes were made, but don't do it in such a way that you're not embarrassing anybody, and talk about what mistakes were made, why the student was playing the game, and then talk about how can we go about fixing said mistakes and get the students to come up and problem solve ways of fixing the mistakes or why they thought the mistakes were made. And again, you have to be very careful here and not do it in such a way that you embarrass the student that made the mistakes. So that, in a nutshell, is what I had researched and found out about virtual reality in the math classroom. I personally am very excited about the different possibilities of virtual reality in math and in the classroom in general. And I found that in my discussion group as well. All the teachers that were involved in my discussion group were also very excited about the applications in their own personal classrooms. Now, so today, what we talked about here in part 2 was how can virtual reality be used in math, and we talked about the previewing of the new content, practicing the skills, review, real world applications, and things like that. We talked about how the different apps that are out there. We talked about the different advantages of using virtual reality in the math classroom. The major one being that you see student engagement go way up. A lot of students that wouldn't normally be interested in math or be engaged in math are now into math. You're hooking in a lot of other students that you wouldn't before, And as you saw, as I talked about the comments from a student that their teacher actually used it in their classroom, saying that you're getting away from the boring old methods and you're really seeing that engagement go up. And when students are engaged in the learning, their achievement goes up as well. So I hope you are convinced that math or virtual reality has a place in the math classroom and that you see virtual reality as something that you could possibly bring into your own classroom. Uh, I want to thank you for tuning into part two of our mini series with me, Corbin Russell, and I hope to see you again for part three, our final installation of the curriculum issues in technological education, in my specific curriculum issue of virtual reality in the math classroom. Thank you very much.